Hi, I'm Matt.
And I'm Andrew.
Welcome to Waiting with Love. As always, this is a fellowship-style space for people navigating the messy in-between that comes with waiting. Whether you're waiting for a child, as we are, or waiting for something else, we want you to know that you don't have to wait without hope, and you certainly don't have to wait alone.
This is especially true when the waiting has lasted longer, hurt more, or changed you more than you expected. If you've ever felt stuck in the middle of something you desperately wanted, you are in the right place.
Thank you for being here.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you all again for joining us. And speaking about joining us, we are very excited to announce a pretty large milestone. When we first started doing this a couple months ago, we really didn't know what to expect. And about 48 hours ago, we hit 500 followers on Instagram. So we're very proud of that. Matt, congratulations. We're noticing our viewership on the pod is increasing and getting more interactions in our DMs. This is very exciting. This is what we were hoping for, but we couldn't do without you all, so really, really appreciate it. Okay, so last week we kind of went off our, I don't want to say script, but our general topics, and we talked about people who, have been quieter amongst our followers. But this week we go back to kind of like our typical programming of talking about waiting and all that good stuff. And what's interesting about this week's topic is, in the past, a lot of our shows talked about why, which we know a lot of people are following us for the same reason, is waiting is hard. Waiting is difficult. We get numbed of waiting. We get sad. We get depressed. We get angry. We get anxious. All the feels. But what we haven't talked too much about yet, which we want to dive into today, is sometimes in that chaos of bad news or slow updates, or if you're in surrogacy or IVF or adoption, or bad updates or whatever, something that's not positive, basically. But sometimes we actually do get good news. And when we do get good news, then we start asking the question, what if this works? What if this is the time it actually works? Now, for our parents and family who are listening to this right now, we have nothing to announce, so don't get too excited about that. But there's been moments over the last 10 years, and we're going to talk more about in a few minutes, where we thought this might work. Maybe this is the time. Maybe this is finally it. And we let ourselves get excited, for better or worse, and that's kind of what we want to talk about today. So, Matt, anything to add before we dive in?
Again, congratulations to you as well on 500 followers. Thank you to everyone for following on Instagram. Please continue to check us out, share us with your friends, share us with anyone who needs a little hope. But I think it's a good topic, Andrew. I think it's that unfamiliar feeling of possibility and of those moments, sometimes brief, sometimes even fleeting, that cross our minds of what if this time actually works. And I think there's one distant and one more recent times that we've felt that feeling of possibility. I think the first was when we got matched with our first birth mother when we were doing adoption, and maybe I'll let you speak a little bit about that. But the second that is a little more recent is getting a good embryo report back. And I mean, by more recent, that was still a couple of years ago at this point. But if you recall, Andrew, in our first surrogacy journey, we basically had shitty embryos. Like, they had no chance. We went with it because at the time it was all we could afford, and it was
just one clarification for those who follow us closely. This was with a different agency. This was not a guaranteed program. So we couldn't just make new embryos or just try what's the difference. This is what we paid for, and it's all we could afford. Sorry, Matt. That's an important note.
So, yeah, I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about...
Yeah. So I think these are two really good examples as well, because one occurred when we were relatively new in the process, only a couple years into the process, and the other one, as you just said, occurred, the good news of a good embryo report was more recently, right? So we kind of with the adoption, which now, oh God, how many years ago was that? 7-ish? Something like that. Something like that. You know, at the time, we didn't start off, or end off for that matter, happy. We went through the first adoption agency, which went bankrupt on us. Once we, if any of you have done adoption before, all the paperwork, all the home studies, all the background checks, all the interviews to make sure we weren't serial killers, all that good stuff. We finally get through. We're cleared to start meeting with, well, not meeting, but being in the pool to meet with birth mothers. And that agency, literally the next day or next week, went bankrupt on us. Lost all our money, all that time, gone. So then we got paired with a new agent, not paired, but we found a new agency. Had to redo some of it, not all of it, thank goodness. We got into their system relatively quickly to get a birth mother, and then we waited about a year before we received that first profile. And I gotta tell you, when we received that first profile, we were so excited. We were so excited. And again, this is still early enough in our journey where we didn't have, years and years and years of trauma piled up. So of course we were worried this might not work. She might change her mind. All those things that you think about. But I got to tell you, those first probably 2 months, we were in cloud nine. We were so excited.
Yeah, I think it was scary, and I think now that I don't want to say moved on from that, because I think the pain of what we went through on this journey overall is something that isn't going to leave us. But I think to a certain extent we've almost felt as though joy and hope are off limits. And sometimes I feel like, and I think you feel the same way, Andrew, like we have to talk ourselves into, we're allowed to be excited.
Yeah, that's the fundamental difference, right? So when we were first excited about the birth method for the adoption, I feel, and please correct me if I'm wrong because it's been a while, I'm getting old, there wasn't much of that. It was purely just excitement for a while. Obviously, when there was starting to become red flags as we went through the process with her, which of course raised the anxiety and raised all that, but really the first while, it was really, for the most part, unguarded hope and excitement. And now, even when we got a good embryo report, we were happy about 2 years ago. We were excited about it. Thank you. We were excited about it. We were happy about it. But there was that tension of great, but we all know the next hurricane's coming. It's just a matter of time. And I mean, in fairness, we were right. It took a year before we got our first surrogate match. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I think about it as, because of everything that we've been through along this journey. On the one hand, like, yes, when good news comes, it's allowed to be good news, and we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. But I feel like no matter what, there's this fear that we're getting ahead of ourselves, and this fear of, whatever stage of this journey you might be in or that we're in, you're always questioning, are we getting ahead of ourselves? Is it too early to be thinking about X or to be thinking about Y? And we've done plenty of chat GPTing, and we've talked about that before on this show, but I actually think that is one place that Gen AI has been helpful in level setting when and where we are getting ahead of ourselves, but also when we're not getting ahead of ourselves. And I think about the last couple of months, and ChatGPT has actually had some pretty good suggestions about when and where to allow ourselves to be excited, and I think that in and of itself is exciting.
Yeah, and what's interesting about the whole excitement thing, there's no right or wrong, or getting ahead of yourself or not getting ahead of yourself. There's no right or wrong. It's really what makes, I would say, you as the intended parent or parents feel better to get through it all. There's no, if you're somebody who gets pregnant and you're and whether it's through IVF or naturally, and you're still in the first trimester and you want to buy everything, you want to furnish the bedroom, the crib, and all that stuff, God bless, do it. If it makes you feel better. If you're somebody who is going to wait till week 35, or God bless, do that too. Like it's not. There's no right or wrong. I think it's more. What we're trying to talk through today is basically how we're processing it, how we're giving ourselves permission to get excited. What if this does actually work? Are we going to break the dam of bad news if we buy a onesie? Are we going to break the dam if we buy one toy? Full disclosure, we'll tell you an example of this. We were in Thailand a year ago. Oh, that's cute. Almost 2 years ago. And we were walking in. We were in Koizumi. For those of you who watched the White Lotus, that's where season 3, I think, took place. So, Matt, for those of you who know us personally, we're the kinds of people who go around the world to stay at these really wonderful hotels, just like in the White Lotus, and we're the people the White Lotus makes fun of. We basically go to the hotel and don't leave. That's the kind of people we are. But we actually blocked one night to walk into the main town of Koizumi. Go us, we're adventurous. So we went to dinner and then we just walked there's like a big strip of stores and a mall and, just things like that. And we walked into this really cute, I really don't even know what it was, like this little shack right off the road. And there's all these...
A street market.
A street market, yeah. And this woman was selling these handcrafted wood carved like animals with like lanterns in them that you could plug in. It's like a light. It's a light. And we thought this was really cute. And at the time, it was actually right after we got the Embry report. Actually, now I'm thinking about it, we were talking like, should we get something? This would be really cute for the nursery. Should we get one of these little lanterns with the animal on it? This would be really cute. We're nowhere near pregnant yet. I mean, 2 years later, as you can see, we're nowhere near pregnant yet. So we're literally talking about this in front of this woman, of course, from Thailand, who's selling this stuff. Is it too early to buy this? Should we buy this or not? When do we ever come to Thailand again? It's not that much money. This was like a 20-minute conversation, and ultimately we did spend up $25 US that this cost, and we bought it. If that, right? I mean, so isn't that crazy if you think about it? Like, it's not about buying the crib 1 week pregnant or 35 weeks pregnant. It's just these conversations that we have to have. Is it? What if this works? What if it's going to work out? What if it's good news? One day we will get a baby if we keep trying. We believe in with all our heart. What is the big deal if we spend $25 to buy a lantern in it? But we had a 20-minute conversation about this.
Yeah, I think what felt different about that purchase, number one, I just loved it.
It was cute.
And I needed an excuse not to buy it for myself because it's a cute little elephant. But I think there was enough detachment of, yes, there was forward thinking and there was excitement about, hey, one day this would look really cute in a baby's room. But at the time, as you said, Andrew, we weren't pregnant. And although there's been really no update on that, I think that there was detachment. It was a small thing. It wasn't like a crib. It's gender neutral. It's a wooden elephant. And I think by separating it from, a themed bedroom or a big purchase like a crib or a car seat or a stroller, in that moment, it felt exciting. And I think to some extent it still is exciting. It's packed away. It is in to be, one day baby's room's closet. But I think there's those pockets, those fleeting pockets where you go, I hope one day we'll be able to put this to use. But also because it is small and because it wasn't a big purchase, it's not like when tying back to sort of our first example of the twins, it's not like we have a full nursery that is furnished and, suddenly we weren't having these twins and what are we going to do with all of this furniture? And,
yeah, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No? Are you sure? Because I'm going to take it a different direction in a second. So do you want to?
I was too, so go for it.
Interesting. Okay. So one of the things I was thinking, this morning, Matt and I went shopping at the local outlet mall here in southern Maine. And, we drove by the baby store. And, both of us didn't even look at it. It's like, yeah, there's no reason to go there. There's no reason to go there right now, But as he said, in Thailand, it was different. It was a special store. It was a special thing. It was really cool. It was not like once in a lifetime. You can't buy it anywhere else, but it was cool. It was $25. This beautiful hand-carved wooden elephant. And Interestingly, this is where I'm going to take in this now. When we got paired with the birth mother for adoption, again, our mindsets were so different back then. We were 7 years younger. This is before we got sober. We wanted to be parents. I'm not sure it was because it was what was next or societal pressure or just to post it on Instagram, whatever. But interestingly, just about 30 seconds ago, our French son just texted us, our exchange student, and I'm not going to respond until after the show. But now, even when we went to Thailand, which was technically before we met him, but we got sober at that point, and after our experience with him and getting closer with him, we know we're going to be parents. It's going to happen. No doubt in our minds. No doubt in our minds. So it's interesting where it's like when we were doing the adoption, we got paired with the birth mother for the twins. We did the other way. We bought everything. We bought the cribs, plural, dresser, rocking chair, whatever they're called. All that gets. We bought it all. The room was ready to rock and roll. In our defense, we bought it all second trimester, and we were with her all the way through the third trimester. So we had to be ready. And twins come early usually. So that was part of that. But however, this time, I think this is a fair statement, Matt. We want to be parents more now than we did back then. And so even though we're not spending the money or buying all the onesies or buying the crib, we do believe it's going to work at some point. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a few elements to that, and we talked about some of this a couple of weeks ago for my 40th episode. I think one of them is just there's more maturity being older and
old,
and thinking about these things. I also, reflecting back to the twins at the time, and I'm not saying that buying nursery furniture isn't a major purchase for anyone, because it is both emotionally and financially, but at the time it was a matter of like scraping money together to furnish that nursery. And I think now that we're a little bit older and a little bit more financially stable, there are options that would not put us in a situation where we're thinking about how we're going to scrape together enough money to furnish a nursery. And I think that also helps to create some distance because there just isn't as much planning required. I mean, if you remember that year for Christmas, my grandfather had given us a little bit of extra money, and we had used that extra money that we got at Christmas to buy 2 sets of everything, thinking like, hey, this is a generational thing. My grandfather gave us money for Christmas. We're going to use it to pass on to our children. And so there was something, I think, not just the emotional barrier or the emotional weight, maybe is a better word, of buying the 2 cribs, but it was also like where the money came from and the fact that at the time money wasn't growing on trees. Not that it is now either, but I think being a little older and being a little more stable in our careers, maybe that distance sort of helps buffer some of that a little bit. But it also actually opens up where I was going to take the conversation, Andrew, which was, I think over the past several years and several setbacks, there have been small decisions that we've started making without necessarily realizing it. And I think the biggest one we're both sitting in right now was moving to Maine.
Yeah.
Because at the time, and we've talked about this before, so we don't need to go into all the details, but at the time that we decided to build the house and move to Maine, we were not having kids.
Not only were we not having kids, we were not talking about it, and we're working on our other project that's going to dive more into that one day. But right now, we were too scared to talk about it. At the time, we told ourselves we were done. We were never doing this again. So even if one of us felt the urge to try again, neither one of us had the courage to do it. But as Matt was just saying, we go from an urban environment in South Florida to building a very suburban house in a very suburban neighborhood that also just happens to have one of the best school districts in the state. Oops. What a coincidence, So, and now we both admit to ourselves that wasn't like the reason we did this, but it was certainly in the back of our mind during that process.
Yeah, I agree. So maybe because I'm looking at the time and I do want to cover a couple more topics, Andrew, how in your mind, if our listeners are in the same position that we're in this period of waiting, and not waiting, and I think we're going to talk about this in a couple of weeks, could be a day, it could be 10 years like our journey, it could be even longer than 10 years, but in your mind, how do you balance this could work with we've been here before, things could change, and balance that excitement versus fear of being let down again?
Hmm. It's very hard, right? Because none of us have crystal balls. We don't know if. Let me phrase that. We don't know when this is going to work. And I think that's part of it. Now, I know everyone listening right now is all on their own journeys. So, and one of the things we've talked about probably a lot is one of the hardest parts of our journey and everyone's journey in the fertility world who are having issues is we have no idea when this is going to work, or when we've had enough and decide to stop. And the reason why I don't have a problem about saying, and I'm not sure if I'm directly answering your question, but I'm trying to give like a story or I don't say if we're successful, because I'm going to say when, because it's going to work. It is. I believe it with all my heart. And so you're kind of hearing that. What if this works? I do believe it's going to work. What that looks like might change. Maybe we host another student one day. It doesn't have to necessarily, right? But there's going to be another kid in our house, for sure there is, at some point. And so, where I don't want people to hear the wrong thing there either. The solution isn't trying to, host a foreign exchange student and call it your kid. But the point is, if you have the urge to, for anything in life, I mean, really, it doesn't even have to be about this, and you can be creative and patient and all that stuff, you'll get what you want, right? I mean, you'll get what you want eventually. It may not look what you thought it was going to look like, Now, let's make it less theoretical. More, we're trying to have a baby, I guess, a baby. I believe it's going to work. I am not going tomorrow to buy a crib. One area I think I know both of us very well is when we do get more updates, we're probably not going to announce it to very many people. That's just the one area. I think we've talked about why quite a few times here. The questions, people's opinions. Because when we get good news, we're going to be scared. We're going to be very scared. Because what if it works? What if this is the time? And, I'm not saying both of us believe in karma. I don't think that, us telling people is not going to change the outcome. But it adds a lot of anxiety and pressure to us that we just don't want. I would rather do what we've been doing the last few years and be strategic. When we're in Thailand, we see something cute, we buy it. When we decide where we're moving to, we probably should imagine there's going to be kids in the house because that's our goal. That's us. So far that's been the balance of feeling good, doing tangible things to get us ready logistically, but not going crazy where it's giving us, me and you, as anxiety, dread, those bad feelings. There's enough going on in the world for those fertility journeys tough. So the things that we can control, which is basically making logical decisions to prepare for a future we don't know when's going to come, makes sense. One of the reasons, and I'm just blabbering now, but one of the reasons why we don't rush to buy another crib is that gives us pain, seeing that crib, an empty crib in the house, and not knowing it's going to be full. But a cute little elephant from Thailand that has a light in it, that's just cute. That doesn't give us pain. As you said, worst case, we'll put it in our bedroom, worst case. So that's what I think it comes down to. It's really balancing and thinking about what makes you feel good and what's giving you what's tougher on your mental health. And if it's tough for your mental health to tell people like it is for us or buy furniture, don't do it. Don't do it. We have Amazon now. We can get furniture tomorrow if we need it. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, it took us a while to get to a point where we found that balance. And we've talked about this at length on this show, so I won't talk about some of the unhealthy ways that we were coping with this journey at first. But I feel like today there's absolutely hope. And I heard something recently, and it was, hope doesn't cost you anything. And somebody was talking about it in the context of, you have anxiety, I have anxiety, we have 3 dogs with anxiety. Everybody's got anxiety, and anxiety seems to come freely. But for some reason, hope which isn't that different of a feeling, just kind of flipped around, doesn't come as easily. But I feel like today we found that balance, or we're trying to. We're getting better at finding that balance of thinking ahead, hoping for the best, but also not going overboard. And if I think about, even both of our careers over the past 10 years, I mean, if we think about your career, actually, which is probably the better one to compare to, and we've talked about this before, you were going to stop working. If we had continued assuming that the next time it was going to work and you had stopped advancing your career, I don't even know what would have happened. I mean, since that time, you've left teaching, you've gotten a job in the corporate world that you're thriving in, and it has paid dividends, I think, to us, to you, to our bank account. And so I think that even those small decisions of, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, like, yeah, when we have kids, things are going to have to change with our dynamic. I mean, I was gone last week. I'm going to be gone again this week. But we've also not stopped living our lives in this extended period of it.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I know we got to wrap up in a minute or two, but that's the thing, right? It's like, because we can always tell ourselves we shouldn't go on this trip, we shouldn't buy this today, we shouldn't go out to eat tonight because we got to save for the next surrogacy payment, whatever that's going to be, or adoption, or having kids, which is expensive. But again, that's not healthy either. But this could work, right? So how do you balance that? Well, Matt and I have a habit when we're bored at work, or at a meeting, of sending each other's beautiful houses in Europe. Why don't we get a vacation property? And we're just teasing and kidding, of course, but like that would be the opposite, because you know what? Could we make it work financially if we weren't paying for our surrogacy right now? Absolutely, we could. We are that fortunate. But could we make it work right now? No, we couldn't. But let's just pretend we can for a second. It'd be a stupid thing to do. It'd be because we do believe this is going to work. Even the worst days, we do have hope. What if this does work? Well, we can't have two properties. It'd be foolish to spend our savings on a second property. That's a dumb thing to do. But smaller purchases for the baby down the road, sure. Going on that vacation, absolutely. But again, there's no right or wrong. It's really what's in your means, your mental means, your financial means. If buying the crib, again, early in the process makes you feel good, it doesn't give you any stress whatsoever, do it. Absolutely. That's the point. Us spending more money than we should last year to go to Africa Safari probably shouldn't have done it financially, but you know what? It made us feel good for 2 weeks. We needed it. We got, at the time, we got some bad news on this journey, and we needed it. It was great. It was a good investment.
Where we got to see real elephants. Not
Real
in
elephants.
Thailand, but African elephants.
The $25 elephant was a lot cheaper. We should have just anyway.
Yes, it was. But I think we're just about at time. Anything else, Andrew?
No, this was good. So yeah, I mean, we're all in this process. We're on this journey. We don't know when it's going to end, but what if it works? I think it's going to.
What if it works? We'll keep hoping. Thank you for being here. If this episode resonates with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to know that they're not alone.
You can find more about us and this community at www.waitingwithlove.com.
And links to our socials, as always, are in the show notes.
Until next time, keep waiting with love.